Hi guys, for this week's Roleplay Thursday, which hopefully actually get released on a Thursday, not Thursday night, not early on a Friday morning. I'm going to be doing a quick rundown of the races available in the PHB. I'm going to follow up with races available in other things, but to start off, we're going to do the PHB. First race we're going to start with is Dwarves. Now, Dwarves are really cool. Anybody who's watched Lord of the Rings, you understand how the Dwarves work. If you're familiar with Warhammer, the Dwarves in D&D are less bulky and less hench. They're not these bulging, muscular things, but they are still as strong as a human, if not stronger than a human, whilst being half the height. Dwarves have a very good and very lawful society. It's all about family and clans and keeping your word. This, again, grows from the ideas set forth in Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. So you can find a lot of similarities in dwarves throughout most of the worlds and realms in D&D, as well as a lot of similarities with the Warhammer dwarves and dwarves you'll find in other systems, simply because a lot of them sprang forth from the Tolkien lore. In D&D, they mostly deal with the races as they exist in Faerun. Most other realms tend to have less races or a few specific races to that realm, but Faerun is really their core realm, so we are going to find dwarves in that realm. Dwarves are short and strong. They rely on their physical strength and the fact they live hundreds of years to develop complex skills. Dwarven weaponry is a byword for well-made. They have long memories and long grudges. In the D&D realm, if you make friends with a dwarf, it's going to take a long time to do, but once you make friends with a dwarf, that's it. He'll be by your side through thick and thin. If you call, he'll come a-running. He won't even think about it. That's very much how dwarves works. They live in large extended families called clans. Clans can consist of hundreds, if not thousands, of dwarves, and each of those clans will be interrelated through marriage to other clans, often being part of one big meta clan, either attached to a great mountain hall or in the Iron Hills or something like that, where all those dwarves are loyal to each other and are related. It's not like humans that have this idea, we're all from this city, therefore we're Pompey lads or New Yorkers or whatever. This runs much deeper. They are actually all, in some distant way, family. Sometimes in a very distant way. And a lot of the time, in order to avoid inbreeding, you'll have spouses come in from other clans. But once they've married into that clan, that's it. They are part of that clan. This makes dwarves very reliable, very lawful, very loyal, very unlikely to betray you, unlike other races. Make them very, very awesome to play. The stat advantages for playing a dwarf in D&D are you get +2 Constitution, as well as having Dark Vision and Dwarven Resilience. That means resistance against poison damage, which is great when you're drinking. Alcohol is a poison. Don't let your DM tell you otherwise. And Dwarven combat training gives you proficiency with the battle axe, the hand axe, the light axe, and the warhammer, which is nice. You also gain tool proficiency with artisan tools of your choice, or brewer's tools, or macer's tools. This is to represent, as I said earlier, dwarves using their physical dexterity and their strength and the fact that they live hundreds of years to become master craftsmen in their chosen field. In addition to that, most dwarves live underground, therefore they have what we call stone cunning. It's the same as, you might realise that as the trees are thinning out, you're coming to the edge of the forest. Dwarves might realise as the rocks change, you're coming to the above world. The other ability, there are 2 separate types of dwarf in the PHB. Hill dwarfs, who are the more friendly and gregarious type of dwarfs. Make no mistake, they're still very grouchy, they're still very distant compared to a human, but they're much more likely to actually talk to humans, actually get on with humans. They're the ones that will become chatty and friendly as they open up to you. Then you've got mountain dwarves. Mountain dwarves are the stronger, the harder ones. They're the ones who are much more likely to remain distant and gruff. Yet at the same time, they're the ones that will, once you make a friend of them, be your friend forever. They're the ones that will travel 1,000 miles to keep an oath. Hill dwarves will do that as well, but it's very much part of the mountain dwarf's personality. The hill dwarves give you a wisdom improvement of 1, and your hit point maximum is increased by 1 and increases by 1 every time you gain a level. That's dwarven toughness and your ability score increase. Mountain dwarves, you have an ability score increase. Your strength score increases by 2, and you have proficiency. And with dwarven armor training, you have proficiency with light and medium armor. You can see right there, dwarves are straight into the combat monkey abilities with that. They're right tough buggers, as they say. Next, I'm going to move on to elves. Elves are possibly the most alien of creatures. They live for thousands of years, well, up to 1,000 years. Because of that, they have time to try out many things. They'll often be very experienced. They're much more relaxed than the other races. They're much more patient as well. They often view humans as exceptionally impatient. And elves are quite happy to fiddle with something for 100 years. They're quite happy to negotiate to and fro and not worry that they're not getting anywhere, because they can often just outlive any non-elven enemy. The elves are a much more slender and graceful race. They're not as tough and robust as humans, but they are much more elegant. They're much more likely to outmaneuver a human. Again, with elves, they don't tend to make friends too easily. Not because, dwarves are very insular, so they don't trust outsiders. The difference between that and the reason that elves don't make friends is because they expect everyone to die. There's a tragic saying, if you're a Doctor Who fan. Doctor Who turns to one of his companions and says, "You can spend the rest of your life with me, but I can't spend the rest of my life with you." What he means by that is he lives for thousands of years. Humans only live for 100 at most. He can settle down with a human, but then, as far as he's concerned, in the blink of an eye, that human's dead from old age and natural causes. Elves have the same thing. They really want to see something special from a human before they start getting emotionally invested in something that's gonna die on them. I sometimes think that elves consider humans pets. It's like, here boy, we're going to go on an adventure. Which, frankly, is a slightly great way to play an elf. They're often distant. They're often cold. Again, not because they're actually distant or cold creatures. Elves are exceptionally passionate, but because they tend to avoid investing too much in a creature that they're going to miss tomorrow. Elves tend to exist in hidden realms. Again, not because they're distant, but because the passions and wars of other races don't bother them, so they don't get involved in them. If something is good and right and true and could affect the rest of the world forever, that's when they'll step in. Again, if you're a Lord of the Rings fan, you see this. They don't do anything until Sauron rises up again, and they're looking at something that could potentially affect the world for thousands of years, at which point they come back into it and they start fighting again, because other stuff like that, because the other stuff, the little bits and pieces that happen, doesn't worry them. They know that in the blink of an elven eye, it'll be gone. That is, and again, that is a standard tactic you'll see amongst a lot of elves, especially the older ones, if you encounter them as NPCs, just to outlive their enemies. All they need to do is not get killed and create a safe space for them, and in a few decades, their enemies won't be in power anymore. In maybe, if their enemies are human, in at most 100 years, which is a short period for an elf, that human will be dead and his descendants will probably be dead. And even when humans live 100 years, their empires, their cities rise and fall within that time, and change completely. Elf stats, you get an increase, a dexterity increase by 2. You get dark vision. You have keen sense, proficiency in the perception skill. You have advantage on saving throws against being charmed through Fey ancestry. There are 3 types of elf. High elf, well, actually no, tell a lie. There are dozens of types of elves. There are 3 main types of elves covered in this book. High elf, wood elves, and dark elves. High elves are very much your Lothlorien elves. What's her name? Galadriel. Despite the fact that in realistic terms she's probably a wood elf because she lives in woods, the way she acts, the way she thinks, the way she plans and perceives the world is very much that of a high elf. She's exceptionally powerful. She's exceptionally long-lived, and she plans accordingly. Wood elves are much more like Legolas. In Lord of the Rings, all those elves are kind of related and interrelated, but they're much more like Legolas of the Woodland realm. Is my lunch for having picnic? No, yeah. I'm doing a video. Much more like Legolas. They much more have their finger on the pulse of the world. They live in it. They live as part of it, and therefore, despite the fact that they will live for thousands of years, they tend to pay a bit more attention because a high elf watches continents rise and grow. A wood elf can see a forest wiped out by that, and he doesn't want that to happen. Yeah, they're much more. I guess they're much more like farmers or wardens or rangers. Whereas high elves believe in allowing stuff to flow and only worrying about it when it's big. Wood elves tend to be much more about tending their flock. They tend to be much more about making sure the little things get prodded and twisted and turned and guided as need be to make sure the bigger picture stays there. Whilst they tend to be distant from humans, preferring their woods, they tend to be the ones you're more likely to see get involved because they know that humans are part of the world, and that as much as they're going to outlive humans, they know that what humans do and what orcs do are all going to have a relationship to their particular part of the world. They're kind of more aware of the symbiotic oneness of nature and all that bullshit. Dark elves are evil and chaotic and vicious and nasty to a fault. They're primarily bad guys, but you can now play them as player characters. They are a fallen elven race. They're very much like sort of fallen angels in that they're a twisted, darker, bitter, crueler version of elves. They remember before the fall, they remember having this stuff done to them, and they aren't happy about it. And they want to be this power again, and they're plotting and scheming to do that. You'll find a lot of good guy dark elves, mostly because genetics, even in D&D, genetics doesn't dictate who you are, and society only lends and places pressure on you. It is not uncommon for a high elf or a wood elf to just go, nope, I'm changing what I want to do, or even, and I'm going to be part of the city or part of the realm. And it's not uncommon for a dark elf to go, I'm not going to be evil, I don't believe in this, I'm going to find another way. Stats wise, the different these 3 elves, you get high elf gives you an intelligence score of 1. Wood elf gives you a wisdom score of +1, and drow gives you a charisma score of +1. With the high elves, you get elven weapon training, which gives you proficiency with longbow, short sword, short bow, and longbow, as well as 1 cantrip of your choice, just because they're used to throwing magic in that. Plus, you get an extra language just based on the fact that you live forever. Elf weapon training again for widows, so the same 4 weapons there. Fleet of foot, your base walking speed increases by 35. You walk everywhere. You're just used to making good time. And Master of the Wild, you can attempt to hide even when you're only lightly obscured by foliage. If you've ever watched the Rambo film or the Predator film where Arnie and Rambo cover themselves in mud, that's wood elves. They can be lightly obscured, and they just bend and twist their bodies, cover their faces in a bit of muck, and just hold perfectly still so you can't see them. And that's quite cool as well. For drow, because they live underground, you have superior dark vision. Instead of being able to see for 60 feet, like many elves, you can see for 120 feet. They're sunlight sensitive because they can see so far in the dark. When they're out in the sunlight, it gives them disadvantage. This is something for DMs to remember and go with, as it will really affect how your players roll. If your player chooses to have some sort of sunglasses, and there were medieval sunglasses, those things actually go back a lot further than people think. Point of fact, Nelson, who's a British Sea Admiral, if you know what to be aware of, he's famous for wearing an eye patch, and people used to joke that he wore it over his good eye. This was because he did, because Nelson had gone blind in one eye, and he was concerned that the constant exposure to the sun would damage his other eye. So what Nelson actually did was he basically had a single sunglass lens which went over his good eye to protect it from UV damage, which we now know is actually quite a reasonable thing. In addition to that, even back in medieval times, there were leather-like masks with a thin slit in them, which acted in a similar way to a Polaroid sunglass, in that they kept the light from up there glaring your vision. So there are ways around it if your GM will allow it, but as with all stuff like that, it can easily get knocked off in combat. So that's a cool roleplay thing right there. Drow magic, the dancing lights cantrip. When you reach 3rd level, you can cast Fairy Fire once with this trait and regain the ability to do so when you finish a long rest. When you reach 5th level, you can cast the Darkness spell. So you've got a couple of cool spells there and access to them, which makes it rather nifty. You've got Drow weapon training, which is slightly different in that you have proficiency with rapiers, short swords, and hand crossbows. The idea being that Drow are smaller, tend to rely on more brutish weapons or more dexterity-based weapons like the rapier. The other thing being that the space they're in is more compressed. You might not have space to draw a longbow, plus a longbow comes to its best when fired in an arch, where a crossbow can actually make a lot greater distance in a straight line. So that's quite cool there. It's worth noting that with the Drow, they usually follow a god called Lilith, who is the god of spiders. She's also the god of chaotic infighting. The Drow are always plotting against each other. It's literally a way of life. The way to climb the higher social ladder is to be good at something and to be patient. The way to, wood elves tend to promote people on their merit. The way that you climb a social ladder if you're a Drow is by being good at what you do and then killing the guy above you to take his or her place. It's also worth noting, whilst the other two elven races are actually fairly egalitarian, they're not sexist, they don't prefer male or female, they recognise both. The Drow society is very much matriarchal. Women are in charge. Only women can be priests. And the clerics of Loth run Dark Elf society. Also with Drows, women tend to be bigger and larger, so women actually tend to be the warriors more than the men. Male Drows often find themselves gifted with magic, and you'll often find that the male Drows are either warriors alongside the women, albeit a little smaller and more delicate, or they're wizards and magic users. That tends to be where Drow gain their power. That's not to say there aren't Drow blacksmiths and them like that. Next, we've got halflings. If you've watched, again, I'm going to refer a lot to Lord of the Rings. There's a reason for that. The book Lord of the Rings inspired a lot of the races and a lot of D&D. D&D was very much a way of playing that particular ideology. If you look prior to that, elves are in fact a nasty, vicious type of fae. Goblins and hobgoblins are all short and vicious things. Orcs don't exist. An orc is actually a type of big goblin, or again, a type of big hobgoblin that Tolkien invented because hobgoblins and goblins weren't big enough to be threats to people. But anyway, halflings are basically hobbitses. and they are basically Pippin and Merryweather. They're very much gregarious, happy-go-lucky, fun-going guys, often nicking things because they say things and go, "Oh, shiny, I like that." They live slightly longer than humans, but are very much similar to humans in their thoughts, appetites, and ideas. They're small but practical creatures, again, like Samwise Gamgee. They're always thinking, well, this is all well and good, but how do I get fed? And things like that. They often come from more agricultural societies, so they often know their way around animals. And the same with many people who are agricultural. They don't tend to have that much time for silliness. Now, by which I mean they're completely silly, but when it comes to actually doing stuff, their first thought tends to be, where am I going to get food over my head? Where am I going to get fed? And whilst they might have a lot of silly thoughts and fun thoughts, they don't spend anywhere near as much time as elves or humans thinking, well, what's going to happen in 100 years? What's going to happen? Is this morally right? Is this morally wrong? They tend to think more on the lines of, well, are we going to be able to live till tomorrow and things like that. They're very naturally inquisitive. They're usually nice, and it's their nosiness that gets them into trouble rather than their meanness. So that's quite cool about them. Stats wise, where are we? Stats wise, where are we? Your dex. You get a dexterity increase of +2. It's because they're small and light-fingered. They can nick things and do things. And there are two types of halflings within this book. We've got the Lightfoot halflings, which gives you a charisma score +1. They're more the guys that tend to hide from people and tend to avoid stuff. They're naturally stealthy, can attempt to hide even obscured by only a creature that is at least your size. They can literally hide behind people's legs. Then you've got the stout halflings. If you've read the Lord of the Rings book, there are bigger, stronger halflings that are actually a bit more chaotic. They tend to be the Tooks and people like that, and the Brandy Bucks. They're spoken of, and they're actually a little tougher and a little hardier. They often deal with the world a little more and have come to the opinion that whilst running is great when you can do it, sometimes you've just got to punch something. Those guys, they get a constitution score of +1 and have an advantage on saving throws against poison, and they have resistance against poison damage, which is actually quite useful. I've got humans are the next race. This is the last race I'm going to do in this part. The next part I'm going to move on to some of the other races. The variance in humans as opposed to the normal world is they're very, as opposed to this world, in Faerun and the other D&D worlds, they're much more medieval. They tend to be much shorter lived, much more bucolic. Most humans you encounter are going to be simple because education isn't as widely spread. There's a lot of variants of humans. It's worth noting that almost every D&D realm covers some kind of culture. Covers some kind of culture that gives a nod to a real world culture. Many of the main cultures are medieval Western, but there's medieval African cultures, there's medieval Middle Eastern, Arabian cultures, Far Eastern, there's Chinese and Japanese style cultures that you'll find in almost every realm if you go far enough. There's even Olmecs and Aztecs in the Faerun world. You can't get to them, but they do exist. Or at least it's very difficult to get to them. So if there's any race that you want to play or any culture you want to explore, it's covered in the humans. If you are of an ethnicity and would like to play something close to your ethnicity, it's available to you in the humans. I don't tend to play humans that much, mostly because I like to play weird things, but they are basically the middle of the road for races. Most things are a human plus this or minus that. That being said, humans get your ability scores each increase by 1. So instead of getting bonuses, you get 1 on everything. But that's all you get. You don't get any dark vision, you don't get anything else. None of the other special abilities. You're just slightly better at everything. Humans in Faerun and in a lot of the realms are generally considered to be the jacks of all trade. Part of the reason for this is it makes them ideal for a new player to play. You pick a human, they'll think roughly like you do. Even the medieval style characters in Faerun tend to think more like a modern human would, just because they're designed that way so that they can be more easily played by modern humans. There is a variant human which I like. You increase 2 different ability scores by 1, so you get to choose which scores you increase, but you're not amazing at everything. You're just better at a couple of things. You gain a proficiency in 1 skill of your choice, and you gain 1 feat of your choice. So instead of getting a bunch of ups and nothing else, you get to be, it still retains the jack of all trade, but you pick your specialization at the beginning, meaning that you're just as specialized as all the other races and species in D&D. You just get to choose which way that goes at the beginning, and this represents, you know, humans growing up, learning, and then picking the skill or the thing they want to master. And I think that's quite good. I'll hopefully see you guys next week. We'll be starting with Dragonborn, who are pretty much the first of the rarer races in Faerun. Basically, I've gone through all the common ones. These are now the ones you're less likely to encounter, and I'll be going through that next time, guys. Hope you enjoyed this. Hope some of you found it helpful. If you're new, hope it helps answer some questions that you might have. Have a nice day, guys. Bye. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed that video, and if you did, remember to like and subscribe to my channel. I'm also on Facebook and Twitter. Not sure why, but I am. So if you like it, see me there, and please tell your friends. Thanks very much. Bye.